Hi, it's Etan. I am right on the port of Los Angeles in San Pedro. And if you're wondering what this weird gray grilly thing is below me, that is a shopping cart. Yes, I found a shopping cart in the middle of a giant courtyard, and that's the best thing I could find to mount my camera. These are the sacrifices that I make to bring you stories like the one about this building behind me. And it used to house the starting point for the San Pedro Municipal Ferry from 1942 until it shut down ferry service in 1963. Now, this building was the starting point for the ferry that took you across the channel. It's about a 3-minute ride to Terminal Island. It is hard to overstress the importance that Terminal Island had to San Pedro and to the Los Angeles harbor more generally in the years during and after World War II. So there had been all kinds of businesses on Terminal Island before World War II. But afterwards, this was the center of the Pacific Fleet that was operating in the Pacific Theater. And there were all kinds of canneries that were revolutionizing the cannery business, packing in sardines and tuna and mackerel and stuff. And you also had two major shipyards here, building ships for World War II and all kinds of other industries. So this building itself has a pretty fascinating history. There were plans from the 30s to create a ferry that would go across to Terminal Island. At the time, a lot of big cities were getting rid of their ferries in favor of large bridge projects. So the ferry itself, that they called the Islander, that was a used ferry. They bought it from Washington State. It used to be used up in Puget Sound. And the apparatus that they used to help load vehicles and keep the ramps working and everything, they're called the lifting rams. That entire apparatus was bought from San Francisco. It used to be in operation for the ferry that took people to Treasure Island. This was right at the end of a Pacific Red Car line, so it was really easy for commuters to come down from wherever they were living, hop across, took 3 minutes, do their thing, and then come back after a long day at work. And the ferry was running constantly, so plenty of traffic. In fact, in its 21 years of operation, the ferry served 7 million commuters and passengers, and 70,000 vehicles were shipped to and fro. Now, after World War II, the shipyards on Terminal Island would dismantle the Pacific Fleet, use it for other purposes. And by about 1963, the ferry stopped running because the Vincent Thomas Bridge was created just a little bit north, and there is a law in California that says that you cannot have a ferry within a mile of a toll bridge. So the ferry stopped running, but the LA Harbor Department would use part of the building for their own offices for another 12 years or so before moving. And after that, they weren't quite sure what was going to happen. So the ferry building on the other side, on Terminal Island, was demolished. And they were worried that this building was going to meet the same fate. But a group of concerned San Pedro citizens started grassroots efforts to push for its reuse as something else. In 1980, it turned into the Los Angeles Maritime Museum, and as you can see, that still is today. I was just in there. It's a really marvelous museum. They have a lot about the history of the harbor and how San Pedro became what it is today. They have a deep dive, I didn't even intend that pun, about the Japanese Americans that were really like the core of the fishermen in the early part of the 20th century and what's happened to them. They have a whole lot of model ships and information about shipbuilding and what it was like to sail in different eras of maritime history. And you also get a good sense of what happened to this building. They have a whole exhibit dedicated to the history of the building itself that I was surprised to see. It is a lovely, streamlined, modern building, though. Very typical of its time, but it's got this cool, like, hexagonal turret thing with the clock tower, and some nice rounded edges. Kind of looks a little bit like I don't know, a boat, or maybe one of those old-timey, like, diving outfits, something like that. It was remodeled in 1977. A lot of things were preserved, actually. Of course, they had to change the lettering, and now it says Los Angeles Maritime Museum instead of Municipal Ferry Building. But they did preserve the font. And over here, that entrance is the exact same sign that would have been there in the 40s. Thanks for doing LA with me.